What's up, everybody? Thanks for listening to the Whatcast. We're going to talk about something I find super interesting. We've covered many strange burials and graves before, but Mike, you got a good bit on a type of grave we've never covered before, and one I didn't think we would cover.
Well, actually, we did cover. I don't know to the extent of which we've covered it, but we did an episode on vampire burials, I think specifically on different vampire graves. And this kind of fits into the same category. They're known as apotropaic graves, and basically what that means, it's a way that people are buried that's meant to ward off evil. There's some disagreement on whether this style of burial was made to protect the body from evil, or whether it was designed because they thought the body in the grave was evil and to protect the people outside of the grave. And maybe there's a mixed bag here. But the ones that I'm talking about specifically are people that are buried with a sickle across their throat or across their hips. And we don't know for a fact why this was done. And there's speculation that maybe it was a way, like it was put over the throat or over the hips, so that if the body were to resurrect as it, sat up, it would decapitate itself or cut itself in half. But there's another school of thought that says maybe this was done to ward off any spirit from possessing these bodies.
Huh, how would a sickle, just they would see that they can't get up,
right,
I guess?
They would know. Yeah, they would be like, oh shit, if I possess that and I sit up, then I'm going to kill myself automatically. It's not worth it. But when we covered the religious artifacts in the last episode and on our latest Patreon episode as well, we got into another one of those weird religious relics. But this was going to be one of the things that I was going to cover initially, was these anti-evil graves. And, well, for one, we ended up running out of time on that episode, so I wouldn't have been able to cover it anyway. But I wanted to be able to kind of devote some time to the topic. So I figured it would be better, rather than rush through it and just spend like 5 minutes on it, kind of dig into things a little bit.
Yeah, I find the subject completely fascinating. The vampire graves, the graves that you're going to talk about. I don't know about any of the ones that you're going to talk about, but to me, it's such a strange thing. If I'm alive in the 1500s and I think that there's somebody in our village who's a vampire and we kill them, I don't think I'm going to bury it in our local graveyard. I think I'm going to put somebody who I don't like on a horse with that thing and have them ride out as far as they possibly can and drop it off and then come back. It's weird that they kept things that they feared enough to take actual precautions that would work. I mean, can you imagine being a vampire and waking up and being like, shit, I can't move, and you're just stuck there? I mean, taking such precautions over something that they fear so much that they kept kind of so close.
Yeah, well, you figure if you've got things that are thought to be a threat, you've got to have some contingency plan in place, But the idea of some sort of evil or demon, there's in Poland itself, there's several different names for this, for what these things are, and they're thought to be different things, but kind of the same. There were the upior, and I apologize if I'm likely butchering it, and see all the other apologies I've made in the past and just apply it here as well. But then there's the strigoi, and there's a few different ones. I can't remember the name of the third, or I'm sure there's more than that as well. But there's a bunch of different types of these like spirits that well, I don't even really want to call them spirits necessarily. Like in some cases it's like a possession. Some cases it's like an undead being, like the person dies and then comes back. And there's all sorts of stories about them, not only in Poland but in the surrounding area. But the thing is, a lot of these stories come from the 16th and 17th century. So, for instance, there's a story from what's modern day Croatia. Used to be Istria, but in the 1600s, there was a stonecutter named Jure Grando, and according to the story, he rose from the dead after he died to torment his friends and relatives, and he was even said to sexually assault his wife after he had died.
Come on, pal.
So what they ended up doing was digging up his grave and impaling him with a wooden stake to the floor of his coffin and then reburying him. And once they did that, that kept him in the ground. There've been several we've discussed on the show before, when we talked about the vampire graves, all the different skeletons that were found with something stabbed through their chest, pinning them to their coffin, or with a rock or a brick stuffed in their mouth. In some cases, they will also use a copper coin. There have been skeletons that have been found with a green stain on the roof of the mouth, which would be from filling the mouth with, or, well, not necessarily filling, but putting copper inside the mouth, because that was thought to ward off evil. But in Poland, there seemed to be a lot of them, and we did talk about one on that episode where we talked about the vampire graves. We talked about an archaeological find from 2008 where there's this grave site that was uncovered that had 300 graves, and it dated back to the Bronze Age. So what they were speculating somewhere between 3000 and 600 BC, somewhere in there.
Damn.
Well, that was where the original, when they originally started using it as a burial ground, but it had been used from that time as recently as the 1800s. But for some reason, bodies specifically, well, there's a reason, and I'll get to that, but bodies from the 16th and 17th century, so that's the 15 and 1600s, there were 6 bodies from this time period that had specific things that tied them to this these weird graves. There was one that was a man who was estimated to have been between 35 and 44 years old. There was a woman between 35 and 39 that these were both pinned to their graves. There was an elderly woman who had all of her teeth pulled out and a coin in her mouth. There was a teenage girl who had a copper coin and a copper headband placed over her skull. And all of them were buried with sickles. And it was either all the sickles were either laid across their throats or across their hips.
Wow.
So we discussed those ones before, and to me the craziest one is the copper headband, because the copper headband was supposed to be to protect from evil. So it's, in this case, it kind of seems like it was more that her body was being protected rather than, trying to keep a dead body at rest, I guess.
That's interesting. Why would they? Maybe just because we got to consider here that these are all people that are formerly loved ones turned into a vampire or not. But I don't get the impression that they're putting coins in their mouths and putting sickles on their necks to keep the body protected. I think it's to keep the body there. I think maybe copper removes all magical energy so that if there is some type of spell for resurrection, that it can happen. And obviously the sickles are there to destroy this body. if it comes back to life. I don't think they're there to protect the body from evil so much as keep that body there.
Part of the beliefs at the time involved I shouldn't say involved, the idea of what created these revenants or vampires or demon possessed bodies. A lot of it had to do with the way the person died as well. It was thought that a person that committed suicide would likely come back as one of these spirits, as would someone who died from a horrible disease. They would come back. And that kind of ties into the reasoning behind why a lot of these cases happened in the 15 and 1600s. And during this time period in Poland, but also in the areas of like the Slovakia, Hungary, Austria, Romania, like all where we get a lot of the vampire lore from. This time period, there were a lot of wars going on within this century. The weather was cold. It was almost considered to be a small ice age. And there were also several plagues that came through, including cholera. And I've talked in the past about tuberculosis as well being thought because of the how people would cough up blood, and typically if someone in the family died, they would come back, or the thought was they would come back and weaken their other family members, but in reality it's that person got sick and then now their family is sick, and so in that way, with these plagues that come through, it would have been similar, where you've got someone in the family who dies of this horrible illness, and then all of a sudden other people start dying. And in some of these illnesses, they as the body decomposes, it'll create like a certain type of discharge, which could appear like blood. So if the corpse is exhumed, they dig up the corpse and it's like, oh shit, this thing's got blood coming out of its eyes and mouth. It's clearly fucking Strigoi. Let's pin it to the coffin and throw a sickle over its throat and call it a day. But there's this story from 1674 in Poland that actually talks about this a village that was terrorized by a revenant that returned back from the grave after dying and was drinking the blood of the villagers. So the townspeople, getting sick of this thing, dug up the body and they decapitated it and then buried it again, and that was said to have done it. So I think I think a lot of these things are really deeply tied to superstition, and it's not always like you have to pin them to the grave. There were also actually as recently as I think July of this year, there were archaeologists working in a 17th century cemetery outside of the village Pien in Poland, and they excavated the remains of a child, and it had been buried face down with a padlock near its feet. And this was another thing that they would utilize, thinking that the lock would bind them to their grave. In some cases, the lock would be put around their ankle, sometimes around the toe. In this case, it was between the feet of the child. But they're buried face down, and it's thought that because they're in like a prone position, that it'll discourage evil from possessing the body because it's facing downward. So you think of like, if you're rising, you're going to try to sit up, and if you're facing down, you sit up, you're not going to be able to sit up because you're facing downward. And it seems like in superstition, and I don't know how much we've really discussed this aspect of it, but there's a lot of superstitions that make it super easy to like trick these beings. Like there's in fairy lore, but this also ties over to vampire lore, or maybe it's werewolf lore. But if you drop if you drop a bunch of items on the floor, they have to stop and count each one. Like in some if you drop a bunch of rice, some it would be like a bunch of marbles or a bunch of needles or whatever, a bunch of something, and before that they can do any more harm, they need to sit there and count everything that's there. Like they just have this compulsion. Like it's just an easy way to trick them. So here, all you have to do is make the body face downward, and the stupid spirit won't know it hit him. Stupid dumb spirit.
It won't know to turn over or something like that.
Yeah, because it's a stupid dumb idiot. But I do think that a lot of this is just trying to make sense of these plagues that were going through the area, and not knowing that they were plagues, and just seeing the way that it's affecting everybody. But a lot of it ties to traditional superstition and beliefs, but weirdly, it's because of, in a lot of ways, due to Catholic dogma during this time period. So we recently, in this time period, there was recently the Reformation, where Protestant religion started breaking away from the Catholic Church. And so you had the Catholic Church kind of doing this counter-Reformation, where the Catholic Church was kind of trying to, I guess, push back the rising popularity of the Protestants. But because of this, they in order to do this, they were kind of doing like a negative propaganda campaign, where they would basically be like, the Catholic Church is the only way to save your soul from the evils of the devil, and everything else is witchcraft, and the only way to save yourself from witches and demons and devils and the living dead is to follow the Catholic religion. And we've talked so many times about how the Catholic religion kind of adopted belief systems from different folk religion or folk beliefs or whatever. So because of these, the Catholic Church acknowledging the fact that there is a supernatural evil, this kind of brought about a resurgence in the Slavic folk beliefs, which included all of these superstitions about how to deal with demonic spirits and the living dead.
I got to ask, it's a question I wanted to save for later, but I got to ask you, it seems like these people are taking drastic steps to stop these things from coming back to life, or either way, protect the body, keep the body there. I mean, you're talking about a whole, like a whole practice on how to do these things. Some of these things lead to the mutilation of bodies of loved ones and stuff like that. That couldn't be easy for people to do even in the 15th and 16th and 17th century. You have kids. I mean, even if everybody else around you believes they're a vampire, they might force you to stake, a loved one to the ground. It doesn't seem like something anybody wants to do. Do you think there may have been something going on other than superstition? Because that's kind of, I mean, how much further can you take superstition? Go cut off your mother's head.
Yeah. Well, there is a thought that maybe these items found within the graves might not have had anything at all to do with evil or protection from evil in any way, shape, or form. There's some thought that these, because let's be real, what we're finding here for the most part, at least in these cases with the sickles and the locks, are tools. So what it's thought of is that these items might be more symbolic and show kind of like how the person who had passed was viewed by their community. So they're using a tool that's made of iron, which iron has to undergo transformation in order to be used as a tool. And it needs to, you got to temper it in the fire in order to shape it, hammer it out. There's a whole process to making a blade. And so using a tool like this, not even a blade, but a lock as well, a lock made of metal, it needs to be forged. And you don't just dig up a lock and be like, look, I found a lock in the earth. No, it has to be forged in some way. So there's a thought that maybe using these tools was a way to symbolize the passage of the living person into death, because this tool had to undergo transformation in order to become what it was. So it was more just like symbolic tribute to the person that died.
Right.
Because the way that I'm looking at it, and I don't know, maybe there's a reason, but the way that I'm looking at it is, if these bodies were really thought to be raising from the dead, why wouldn't they just cremate them?
See, that's my thing. That's what I was thinking in the beginning about taking the body far away. Why not just burn it? Why put it next to your aunt?
But yeah, and that's the like with this all being tied to the Counter-Reformation in the Catholic Church, when we've talked about the old witch trials and werewolf trials, after the execution, the body was burned because it was thought that fire would purify and the smoke would carry the soul to heaven. Right. So with this being something that is like
a practice, right? A common practice to deal with this thing.
And even with the bubonic plague, when that was going through, they were burning those bodies. So to me, it would seem like if these bodies were really thought to be vampires, that they would have burned them. So I'm wondering, but it is weird, like when we've got the graves with the stones and the bricks in their mouth, what was the purpose for that? Or when they've got a coin in their mouth. Like I know the old belief the Greeks had with they'd bury their dead with coins on their eyes to pay Chiron and in order to get across the river Styx. But I don't know if that is applicable here, and if so, why would they put it in their mouth?
To me, the whole mouth thing, and maybe I've watched Godfather too many times. To me, stuffing something in their mouth, it represents them not wanting to speak. Maybe these are wizards, the ones that have the rocks in their mouths.
So it's in order for them to not become undead wizards? Is that what you're saying?
Right. In order some chant.
Try to cast your spells with a mouthful of rocks, you motherfucker.
Yep, 100%. But to me, that's super extreme to be something to do to somebody who talked shit when they were alive, or somebody who lied a lot when they were alive. That's extreme. That's what gets me about these grave sites. Again, is that they're so extreme. Go mutilate these corpses. That's rough. And I'm sure.
Well, in most cases they weren't mutilated. It was more the threat of mutilation. Except for the ones where they impaled them. That was definitely mutilation.
Not getting rid of it is weird. I mean, imagine if you live in a village of like 20 to 30 families, and you guys have a graveyard, and some neighbor dies, and for whatever reason they think it's a vampire. I mean, like, how well would it sit with you that they don't burn it, but just bury it with a couple safeguards on it in the local fucking cemetery? Keep it in vicinity of where you and your kids live.
Well, I mean, if they took the proper precautions, I wouldn't have to worry about it, right? Like, if they had it facing down, it's too fucking dumb. I don't need to worry about it.
There's no way.
If they put a sickle over its head, it's going to cut its own head off because it's a fucking idiot. So, it's fine. It's fine, Mateo. You'll be all right.
Fuck that. I would be like, why don't we just set that thing on fucking fire so my children can sleep better at night, so I can sleep better at night? No, they give it a fucking proper burial.
Well, it deserves a Christian burial too, Mateo. It didn't ask to be a bloodthirsty revenant. You think it wanted this life? It didn't want this life. It was thrust upon it through a fucking brutal death.
Yeah. I wonder if somebody was attacked by a reverend and they just let it happen, it would just give them a hug. It would be like, it's me, your Uncle Jerry.
I just wanted to say hi. Why are you running away?
Yeah.
Because you're dripping ooze and rotting, and it's gross.
You have blood coming out of your mouth and eyes, you asshole. That's why.
Yeah, not cool. You're oozing on my duvet cover, you son of a bitch.
Definitely interesting stuff. To me, it has to go beyond superstition to go mutilate somebody that used to live in your community. And I mean, like, stuff their
I don't
mouth
know.
with
It's just just a dead body, you know? It's only meat at that point. That person's fucking gone, man. But I just don't get why they didn't burn him. Why they didn't just throw it on, if they thought it was a vampire, burn the fuck out of it and call it a day.
Yeah, it's evil. It's evil. Let's get rid of it.
Purify it and send it to heaven. God damn.
Yeah.
Just do it.
Don't pass by it when you go visit your buddy Bob, who didn't make it through this battle. God, can you imagine? Can you imagine living in some small ass place, like with a big hill outside of town where you bury everybody, and just staying up a little bit later than everybody else, like you would normally, and looking out the window and be like, "Yep, there's 7 vampires in there right now."
Yeah, right out there in that there cemetery. Be careful where you step at night, boy. Might get your toes sucked.
Them vampires from the south love to suck them toes.
Yeah, that's part of the myth they don't tell you.
Once every full moon, we all walk out to the graveyard with their socks and shoes off and let them suck to appease their sucking needs.
We just dangle them piggies.
Well, I wanted to see if I can find any other cool graves, any other type of cool burials. And so far, we've covered vampires, we've covered demons and wraiths. You covered a wide range of entities that these things could be the graves of. But I wanted to find some interesting ones, and I found a great article that actually includes like step-by-step directions on where to find these things. Like if they're talking about this graveyard in this town in this state, they'll say enter from the south side, take 12 steps. It's the third one on the left. So I'll include it in the show notes, but they have so many cool examples, and I just picked some of my favorites. And the first one is of a witch's grave.
Like what kind of witch?
A good old classic goat worshipping Satan's whore.
Oh yes, with the fucking third nipple, so that Satan can suck on it.
He needs a third. The other two won't do.
No, this one's specifically for Satan. He doesn't want to share his nipples with anybody. This is Satan's nipple.
I didn't know that was a requirement to be a witch.
Well, now you fucking know. You need to get a third nipple.
I wish the people in the 16th century would have known that. They just could have been like, all right, somebody check for the third one.
That was part of it. They would check for it. And if you had the third, they would also check for the devil's button, which was the clit that all women had. That these men were such fucking morons that they're like, oh my God, this woman has the devil's button. That this is what the devil uses to ring her bell, and so she's a witch. She's like, dude, no, that's every woman has that, and they're like, nope,
I've never seen that in my fucking life.
Yeah, I've got a wife, and my wife doesn't have that. And she's like, bitch, go check your wife. He checks her. My wife is a witch. God damn it, my wife is a witch. Let me check my daughter. Oh my God. Next thing you know, there's no women left in the rails.
Well, there's a town in Illinois, or there was a town in Illinois called St. Omer. I say was because now it's a ghost town. Ghost towns have to be one of the coolest things to exist, right?
Especially if they're actually filled with ghosts.
I mean, they all have to be, in my opinion. They all are. As a kid, when I first learned about ghost towns, I found it so hard to comprehend that entire towns and even cities have abandoned, never to be re-inhabited or even repurposed. In my young mind, I figured it had to be something supernatural or paranormal. Why else would a mass gathering of people leave a place that they've built into their homes and the land to be never touched again? To me, it's another extreme, like we were talking about with these burials. Why would an entire place? I mean, there's places where they've found stuff like there's toxic shit in the soil, but there's plenty of places that have been just straight up abandoned. Do you think that some of those places have to have something weird going on?
No, I think I mean, there's the one place in Pennsylvania with the fucking eternal fire that's raging underneath it that has like 3 people that live there.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of places just seem to be places either that were set up to be temporary and then they ended up basically gathering people and then they collapsed over time, or places that kind of sprung up around one thing specifically, like a business, for instance, and then the business collapses or moves and then the city goes with it.
It just seems like in all the footage we get to see in these days of places like that, there's just so many where things are left like people just turn around and walked out. I've seen so many videos where there's food on the fucking table. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Some of that stuff's really weird. Like, what the fuck caused that and why?
Yeah, fully furnished. It's weird. I still find it strange, but one of the things that remains of St. Omer, I think it's actually the only thing that remains, is their graveyard. Well, in this graveyard is one of the most interesting graves I've ever seen. We said before, we've talked about vampire graves. Giant graves are something that I want to cover. But this is the grave that's called the Barnes Monument. There's 4 people buried there. Marcus Barnes, his wife Caroline, his parents Granville and Sarah. And the local myth is that Carolina was a witch. Some stories say she was hung for practicing magic. Some say she was burned at the stake. Some say that she was buried alive. But there are a few things about this grave that may back up the idea that she was a witch. Now, this is one that leaves me with a question for you, Mike. While most of all the headstones face east to west, this monument faces north to south. What does that mean to you? Does that mean anything?
So typically, gravestones are supposed to be oriented to the east because, well, at least Christian burials, I'm not sure about other religions, but Christian burials are supposed to be to the east because when Jesus returns, he's supposed to come from the east. So it's like the dead are facing Jesus so that they can witness his return, I guess.
Well, that won't make him uncomfortable at all, everybody.
Why are there zombies? Why? Yeah, I wasn't told about zombies. And meanwhile, God's like, Jesus, I don't mean to alarm you. You are a zombie. I'm a fucking zombie.
Even if he has like some like omnipotent power to like use his mind to gaze at all the subjects he's about to greet and finds them all staring back at him, I'd be like, whoa.
Yeah. But that's, so I don't know what the north-south orientation is, though. I don't know what that's all about.
Yeah, maybe a punishment or a disrespect of something unnatural. I don't know. I just found that interesting. The death date of Caroline is on a date that could never happen. February 31st, 1882. Now, the legend states that a witch can return to the land of the living one day a year, their death date. So it's said that they engraved a date that could never come to pass to prevent her from returning. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
Me neither. That sounds super local. They also say no film camera can photograph the monument. Digital cameras seem to take pictures just fine, but they say if you use film, it never comes out properly.
Like, what do you mean? Like blurry or?
Yeah, it's just got some type of flaw to where you don't get a good picture of this monument.
Maybe it's just like that weird paranormal thing. Why you can't get a good picture of a ghost or an alien or whatever.
Maybe. It's also said that mysterious people use the grave site for rituals. Now, that's sounds really local legendy, but Mike, I just sent you a picture of this monument, and I want you to see if you can tell me something interesting about it, and I'll go on. The monument itself is pretty weird. The gravestone is a sphere on top of a pyre, actual stone carved logs of wood with a stone sphere on top. Does that signify anything to you? That's weird to me. The locals have an idea of what it is.
So it's basically a pillar with a stone ball on the top.
It's like a pyre, just a pile of sticks. Like
a pile of sticks.
Yeah,
Okay.
arranged in a way that a fire would be. I sent the picture to your phone so you can check it out. It's a really cool sculpture. Check that thing out.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah, that is cool.
So what do you notice that's strange about that picture?
Is that a melted candle on the top?
Yeah, there's candles that are placed on the top of this thing, and there's wax that has ran down the sides of this thing. So even though that sounds super local mythy, apparently it's happening. People are going there and lighting candles and leaving on top of this sculpture.
Yeah, that's weird. Like I don't know. That's pretty weird.
It is. They might be good witches or something like that, because I noticed they're using white candles.
Yeah, but white can be used to signify a bunch of different things.
Right. I know that it can be used in bad stuff as well. But they say the globe signifies her crystal ball that she would use. It's not just a sphere for looks. And it's said that on moonless night, that sphere is said to glow.
Is there evidence of this?
Not to my knowledge.
Then I will say shenanigans.
On the glowing part or the whole thing? I mean, even the candle wax is there.
Just on the glowing part for now. That's the shenanigans for right now.
But that's pretty much it. The article tells you where this place is, where to find it. So if you live in the area, you can go visit this supposed witch's grave yourself.
Next time I'm in Illinois, I'll try to find it.
Yeah.
But I haven't been to Illinois in like 15 years, so probably not going to happen.
The next one I have is pretty weird. A few different things you could call this case, but it's called the Lady in Red. In 1969, workers were digging on the Egypt plantation in Kruger, Mississippi, when the operator of a backhoe felt a patch of ground underneath him give way. So he backed up and dismounted and went to check out what was going on. There he found, just under 3 feet of dirt, a coffin made of cast iron with a glass window. Have you ever heard of a casket made like that before? I mean, it's cast iron. That had to cost a fucking fortune. Who would be inclined to even make a casket where it's going to display somebody's dead body?
That's got to be pretty heavy, too.
Right? But the occupant was clearly visible. It was, quote, a young woman wearing a red velvet dress, white gloves, and square-toed boots from something in the previous century. She was staggeringly well preserved, as the casket was partially filled with preserving alcohol and sealed airtight. Further investigation of her clothes revealed that she was buried before the Civil War.
Do they know, like how long before?
No, that's the only thing I could find. But I mean, that's a long fucking time to only be 3 feet below the dirt, but I guess not. I just read an article where they found some old Winchester rifle from like the 1830s leaned up against a tree in some national park, like just leaned up against the tree. It was like 3 inches into the dirt, like it had been there since then, but people have clearly passed by it or not noticed it this entire time.
Yeah, I've heard of stories like Göbekli Tepe, for instance. You know, I know that's like fucking 12,000 years old or whatever, but it was just sticking up out of a farmer's field. And that's how he found it. He's like, oh, what the fuck is this thing sticking up?
That's crazy.
And then he finds a fucking huge megalithic structure.
What do you think about the cast iron casket? I mean, that's crazy. I guess when he rolled over it, it cracked the glass and it let out probably the creepiest death fart in history.
I bet it smelled delicious.
Yeah. But what do you think about something being constructed like that pre-Civil War?
I mean, there was cast iron pre-Civil War. Is probably just some fucking rich guy who was feeling vain.
Yeah, I was thinking that. I mean, there's theories that the casket fell off a wagon while it was being transported to a graveyard. But with the preservation like that, maybe somebody literally just kept her in their house. Where it was found, there's a graveyard's not there. It shouldn't be there. What if they stumbled onto some creepo necrophile guy?
Or maybe it's a fucking, like, we've heard of saints whose bodies get preserved in like these glass caskets. Maybe it was something like that, where it was somebody who was being preserved in some way.
Yeah, they said it was full of like the residue of preserving alcohol. So someone was definitely preserving this woman on purpose. But for it just to be there, I reckon a house would be there before a graveyard. They'd be able to tell if a graveyard, they know a graveyard wasn't there. So maybe it was just like some underground basement.
Yeah, or something, something like that.
That's creepy.
Well, at least it was just one, It wasn't multiple.
Right.
That'd be much creepier.
So maybe, I don't know, time traveler grave, possibly.
Oh, I like this.
Maybe the description of cast iron and glass is underwhelming. Maybe it was like polished chrome with no fucking seams and some type of quartz crystal.
It was liquid glass is what it was.
Right. They got like the worst journalist ever to write about it. It was metal and glass.
Yeah, and I cracked it.
With my backhoe. Another one I have. How about this, Mike? An alien grave.
Is it the one in Texas?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, dude. I can't believe we've never talked about this.
I think we have. I actually think we have, because when I read this...
Did we in like a UFO crash episode or something?
I think so. But I thought it'd be kind of fun to recover it, because when I came across this, I was like, oh.
Yeah, throw it in with the fucking weird graves.
Yeah. It was a long time ago, though, when I think we covered it. But I for some reason, when I read it, I was like, well, yeah, why didn't we include this in strange burial episodes? But the story comes from an actual newspaper article, the April 19th, 1897 edition of the Dallas Morning News. And it states that a mysterious airship came crashing out of the sky, smashing through the windmill of one Judge J.S. Proctor before finally crashing into the ground, destroying his garden. And this supposedly took place in Aurora, Texas. Locals investigated and found a, quote, petite Martian body in the wreckage. The townsfolk felt so bad for the dead pilot that they actually gave it a Christian burial, rites and all. I know that wherever Gloop Glop done come from, that he loved Jesus. Can you imagine burying an alien?
Gloop Glop does love Jesus, and Jesus loves him.
He does. But they etched an image of his craft on a stone and placed it over its grave, which they buried him under a tree in a local cemetery, which again exists to this day. And you can go see this stone. Ufologists have tried for years to get permission to dig up the body, but officials say no way in hell. You leave Gleep Glor right where the fuck he is.
Yeah, they even went so far because they used to have a gravestone for it, and people became interested in it, and they got rid of the gravestone.
Right.
There was, I think it was UFO Hunters. They had an episode on it, and they were trying to get permission to exhume the grave, and it was denied. So they went into the graveyard with a metal detector, and they found an area that had metal in it, and then they went back the next day, and allegedly all the metal was gone from that area. But I guess there was this guy, I remember seeing an interview with him, who it was, I believe it was the early 2000s when this interview happened. So I don't even know if he's still alive, but he was I think the grandson of the dude whose farm had the windmill. And he said pieces of the vehicle ended up going into the well, and he drank from this well all his life. And he now has these like wicked gnarly hands, like they're all bumpy and like clawed and gnarled. They look like weird tree branches or something. And he said it was because he was drinking this water that was contaminated by this craft. I mean, I that could 100% be some fucking old guy just trying to make sense out of his weird hands. But
sorry, we shouldn't laugh at that. I know, but
well, I mean, really, it is though. It's just using speculation and superstition to explain your malady.
yeah.
So I don't think just because old man Withers over there is talking about a spaceship in the well, this isn't Lovecraft. This isn't The Color Out of Space.
It's crazy. They won't let them dig there, bro. That's they could have the answers to the extraterrestrial question.
It could, but it could also completely ruin the story
and destroy all tourist visitations.
Yeah.
Hell no, he's one of us. You leave our alien alone.
Yeah.
He's just a good old boy. Never doing no harm. Fucking flying in space, then he crashed in this place. Fucking burned down a barn. I'm sorry.
Oh, stupid aliens.
Always crashing, man.
No, they're just fucking morons. They're like vampires. They don't know any better. They don't know how to turn around and spit up or do any of that shit. They're just fucking dumb, stupid idiots.
Well, the last one I have that I wanted to share with you guys is
it about another dumb, stupid idiot?
No, this one's actually pretty interesting. Yeah, I called it the Weeping Headstone, but that might be a little bit of a clickbaity title.
So that's what our episode's going to be called: the tale of the Weeping Headstone. and then they're going to have to listen to fucking an hour of bullshit. And then, where's this Weeping Headstone? Oh, it was the last 2 minutes of the show. Sorry,
2 minutes, probably. But I promise you, it's much more worse than a crying headstone. Mike, are you familiar with the weeping angels from Doctor Who?
The ones that are basically the ghosts from Mario, where if you look at them, they stay completely still, but if not, then they're a threat. But also, they're like the SCP thing, where if you don't look at it, it breaks your neck.
Right, yeah. It's basically like a staple in every horror game that there is now. But basically, if you haven't heard of it, they get trapped somewhere in a graveyard, and there's these statues of angels everywhere in this graveyard, but they slowly notice that if they turn their back on these angels, they move. They come alive. They don't get to see it, but when they turn around, it's in a different position and closer. And that's almost a little bit what's going on here. One morning, March 14th, 1908, the employees of the Natchez Drug Company reported the smell of gas in the factory. So a janitor showed up at around 2:30 p.m. and reportedly began looking for a gas leak using a fucking candle.
Oh, that's the best way to do it.
Oh, yeah.
The surefire way to find it.
Yeah, he found it. He did. At 2:45, an explosion rocked the building and caused the brick structure to collapse on itself, unfortunately killing 7 of its workers, all young ladies, the youngest being 12. The owner of the company was so grief-stricken that he paid for all 7 of the girls' burial plots and then commissioned a giant marble statue of an angel made so that it would be placed next to the girls' graves and it would hover over it, watching over them as they rest. But as soon as the monument went up, passersby started to report that the statue's face and body would turn towards them to face them as they passed by.
And are you sure that's not just like an optical illusion?
I don't know. There's a lot of people who say that you can see it best when you drive by. That may be the case, but it happens so much apparently that this statue is now called the Turning Angel.
Yeah, that sounds like an optical illusion to me.
Yeah, there's a lot of weird ones out there. We've talked about those before, like physical optical illusions, just like the Winchester Mystery House we were talking about earlier with Sam. We talked about the Gravity Hill, where it seems like you're rolling up a hill, but it's literally just like the way the roads like built on the side of the roads. So it might be something like that, but I don't know. It sounds local legendy, but for the statue to even be named the Turning Angel, I mean, is that enough of a thing to make it a tourist attraction?
100%. Absolutely.
That's always the thing. I mean, doing the show for so long, we've come across a lot of things to where people invented things for the sake of tourism. There's been places to where other things were reported that were strange next to other places where strange things were reported, and they got mad because they lost out on tourism. So you can never forget about the tourism aspect.
Yeah, the paranormal's always going to be popular. Like Loch Ness, if they ever definitively prove that Loch Ness Monster didn't exist, that would suck for, like, who's going to want to go to Loch Ness anymore? You know, they're not going to be like, come see Loch Ness for our beaches and exotic wildlife.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's a powerful thing. If I ever get to go to Scotland, which I'd love to fucking do, I'm going to Loch Ness for sure.
Absolutely. It'd be silly not to, you know?
Yeah, even on a whim of a chance of ever being able to go to Scotland, I know that I'm going to go there. So I guess that does hold some type of power, even in today's day and age.
Yeah, it'd be like going to fucking Point Pleasant and not checking out the Mothman statue.
Yeah, or the museum there. Yeah, that'd be insane. Well, there was some graves there that I was surprised to see. So now we can add a witch, a time traveler, an alien.
So we've got a goal then. We need a Bigfoot grave.
Ooh, yeah, I'll look into that. That's a good idea.
For next grave related episode will be Bigfoot graves and dragon graves and fucking stupid idiots galore. Because anything that's in a fucking grave is a fucking moron, apparently. just bury everybody face down, and if they come back, they'll never figure it out. Either that, or people from the past are just complete dicks, and they watch. It's a prank, you know. It's like the fucking 16th century equivalent of it's just a prank, bro. But they're doing it with fucking vampires and zombies.
Right, yeah. You don't have to cut its head off. Just put the sickle over it, around the neck. Okay, fine.
Just put it face down. It'll be completely fine. It'll be hilarious when it rises from the dead and tries to get out, and it just digs itself deeper into the ground like a stupid fucking idiot.
That's hilarious, yeah. Don't bury me face down. If I've been in the ground at any amount of time, the first thing I'm going to do is beef it.
Yeah, if anything, don't bury him face down. Bury him ass up.
Connect a tube to the surface like one of those bells.
Yeah, he'll have his own eternal flame. Just put a little light, a little spark next to it, and then he'll do the rest.
Yeah, if you're ever missing me, you can just come to my grave tube and take a whiff.
Just follow the sulfuric stench and the giant plume of fire. That's where I'm buried.
Thank you for listening to the Whatcast. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, iTunes, and YouTube. Enjoy the podcast. Get yourself a Whatcast t-shirt or a sticker pack. Who was that dude on that one episode? Try the links in Homie's page. All this and more can be found at www.thewhatcasters.com. Thanks again for listening and have a great week.